Hi, old guy here, and this is another list of my top 10 favorite fantasy books that I've read at least so far. I classify fantasy a little more broadly than I do with horror or some other genres. Best way I can summarize it is swords and sorcery. You know, mythical lands, wizards and goddesses, brawny barbarians, Game of Thrones. But not necessarily all swords and mythical ages. The fantasies that I like can be set in contemporary times. Can even have sci-fi and horror elements mixed in. But the main characteristic is a non-existent world that may or may not be human, but is definitely not alien in the sci-fi sense. Yeah, I know that's pretty broad, pretty loose, but it's like pornography. You know it when you see it. Now, I've already made lists of favorites, and from horror to just overall favorite books, and a lot of those books could easily end up on this list. But I figure if I've already given it, put it under some other heading, then it's kind of cheating to round out another list of favorites with something that's already been spoken about. This way, I get to have like 40 or 50 top 10 book favorites, which I guess is cheating too, but in a good way. Now, there's lots of fantasy books that didn't make this list, could instead make my list of books tossed across rooms. I have to think about doing that. Well, and you know which ones these are if you read a lot of fantasy. They're the ones where everything is a capital letter. The chosen one of the mysterious race in the land of humbug who has the gifts of humbuggery. You know exactly what I mean. They're all trope, all checklist. The orphan abused boy or girl who has powers that will save the kingdom. Just spare me. Unfortunately, a lot of those books include a lot of bestsellers and big names and award winners. In my opinion, they are all just crap. But these books are not. These are good ones. First one is The Crystal Cave by Mary Stewart. An oldie but a goodie, this remains for me the best fictional treatment of the Arthurian legend ever, which is kind of a nothing statement because aren't all King Arthur treatments fiction? I mean, at least we think they are. Told from Merlin's perspective, this is the story of Merlin's youth as the despised, illegitimate child of a king and a Celtic princess, and how he discovers the crystal caves where his power develops. First of a 4-book series that Stewart wrote covering the entire Once and Future King thing by T.H. White. Next, A Princess of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. I know, cheesy writing with female characters right out of a Boris Vallejo painting. But this is still a rousing tale of swashbuckled daring do, and one of those books and series that made me love reading. John Carter, adventurer of Earth, becomes, through some odd meditation, an adventurer on Mars, where he fights for every teenage boy's wildest fantasy, the Princess Dejah Thoris. If you can ignore the last 30 years of Martian science, then this is a lot of fun. The Dancers at the End of Time by Michael Moorcock. Consensus is that this is not fantasy, but sci-fi, far future sci-fi at that. And it's not even one novel, but three: An Alien Heat, The Hollow Lands, and The End of All Songs. But to quote that old shibboleth, magic is just technology that we do not understand. But Jarek Carnelian, who lives at the end of time, has powerful tech indistinguishable from sorcery. When a time accident throws him into contact with 19th century beauty Amelia Underwood, he pursues her across the centuries with devastating and sometimes hilarious results. This is not for the faint-hearted, because those end-of-time denizens have lost all sense of a moral compass. The Shadow of the Torturer by Gene Wolfe. Another one easily classified as sci-fi, and another first book of a series called The Book of the New Sun. It is set on the planet Earth. Severian, an apprentice in the Guild of Torturers, is banished for violating the overriding principle of his guild: show no mercy. Next, The Dying Earth by Jack Vance. Actually a series of related stories more than a novel, and also the first book of the Dying Earth series. These are tales of wizards and warriors at the end of the sun's cycle. Sort of like the end of time, except it's just merely the end of the earth. There's only a few thousand people left by then, and all of them are desperate to improve their wizardry so they can dominate everyone else. The occasional alien shows up too, and they try to dominate him. The book was published in 1950 and had a lot of influence on the creators of Dungeons and Dragons. The Black Company by Glenn Cook. The Black Company is a mercenary unit consisting of warriors, techs, mechs, and wizards who fight the enemies of the Lady, who may or may not be someone worth fighting for. A rollicking adventure that at times is just downright hilarious. This is a combination swords and space opera. It's the first of a series too, and all of the follow-on books are well worth reading. The Magicians by Lev Grossman. This is Harry Potter for grown-ups, a very dark, downright terrifying version of the magical world versus us poor muggles. Quentin is a sad sack loser whose innate magical ability gains him an application to study at Breakbill's Academy of Magic. What makes this fantasy instead of standard horror is the existence of a Narnia-like world that turns out more Mordor than anything. And there's a pretty good Netflix series based on it, too. The Lies of Loch Lomora by Scott Lynch. A single-handed revival of the entire fantasy genre. Scott Lynch's Gentlemen Bastards are the best troupe of lying, thieving, conning, conniving, lovable blackguards to have slung a sword or stiletto or magical potion since the Grey Mouser. The insults alone are worth the read. Shadowgate by Kate Elliott. Still my favorite book of her Crossroads trilogy, which I read out of order, and grateful that I did, because I don't think I would have got past the first book, Spiritgate, because it's fairly standard stuff. But once you get through the first novel of world building, then holy Hannah, this is just a great read. Eagle Reeves and Guardians and a horror overtaking the 100. And then there's May. And the last one, The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. The first book of the Broken Earth trilogy, and the first JEMISIN I ever read, and one that just completely blew me away and turned me into a JEMISIN fan. The Stillness is a land ironically named because it is anything but threatened by periodic life-ending cataclysms that have to be contained by properly trained mutants called Origins. But if an Origin gets away from the cruelty of the Guardians, then things shake up. Literally. Okay, there you have it. All of these are actually, most of them are actually first books of series. So if you pick one of them up, you got a chance to go forward into some really great reading. With that, old guy here,